Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something that pretty much runs your entire life, whether you know it or not, your habits. We're going to dig into how they're formed, why they have such a powerful grip on us, and most importantly, how you can actually rewrite their code to completely transform your life.
Okay, so to really get this, let's start with a story. And honestly, it sounds almost unbelievable. It's about a woman whose life was completely turned upside down, not by some stroke of luck, but by figuring out the hidden language of her own habits.
So, this is Lisa Allen at 34 years old, and her life? Well, it was a mess. She was obese, smoking a pack a day, drowning in over 10 grand of debt, and she couldn't hold down a job for more than a year. Now, look at this. Just a few years later, this is the same woman, 60 pounds lighter, a runner, totally debt-free, and killing it in her career. So, what on earth happened?
How does a person change that completely? I mean, what was the secret? Well, it wasn't some kind of magic pill. It all started with just one decision she made on a trip to Egypt. She decided to quit smoking so she could train for a trek through the desert. And that one single change, it kicked off this incredible chain reaction, this positive cascade that basically rebuilt her entire life from the ground up. So to really understand how she pulled this off, we've got to look under the hood at our brain's operating system. It all comes down to this super simple, three-part loop that our brain uses to turn just about any action into an automatic routine. And it does this for one reason: to save mental energy.
Okay, so this is the fundamental pattern that's running in the background of our lives all the time. First, there's a cue, which is just a trigger. That leads to a routine, which is the action itself. And that ends with a reward. Think about your morning coffee, right? The cue, waking up. The routine, making and drinking that coffee. The reward, that awesome jolt of energy, that feeling that you're ready to start the day. Our lives are just jam-packed with these loops. Cue, routine, reward. It's so simple it's almost deceptive.
But here's the thing that really drives this whole loop, the engine that makes it spin. It's craving. See, it's not just about getting the reward at the end, it's the anticipation of it. Your brain starts to crave that satisfaction before you even do anything, and that creates this powerful, powerful neurological urge that becomes almost impossible to ignore.
And this is where it gets really exciting. Because once you understand this code, guess what? You can learn how to rewrite it. You don't have to fight the habit loop. You just re-engineer it. And that brings us to what's called the golden rule of habit change.
And the rule is, believe it or not, surprisingly simple. You don't have to ignore the cue that kicks the whole thing off. And you definitely don't have to deny yourself the reward your brain is screaming for. You keep the old cue, and you deliver the old reward.
So, what do you change? Just the middle part. The key is to consciously swap out the routine. You basically slide a new, better behavior right in between that starting cue and the final reward. You're still satisfying the exact same neurological craving, just in a much healthier way. Okay, let's take a real-world example. A woman named Mandy was a chronic nail biter. Her cue was this feeling of tension in her fingertips. The old routine? Biting her nails, sometimes till they bled. So to change, she kept the cue. Whenever she felt that tension, she just inserted a new routine. She'd rub her arm or stick her hands in her pockets until the urge went away. The reward she was after, that little moment of physical stimulation, was still satisfied, but the harmful routine, totally gone.
But there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it is absolutely critical, especially when things get stressful. It's belief. You have to genuinely, truly believe that change is possible for you. And that belief, it gets so much stronger when you're part of a community. Because when you see someone else succeed, it makes your own success feel not just possible, but inevitable.
Okay, so let's take this whole idea and scale it way up. It turns out some habits, they're called keystone habits, have this incredible power to trigger a massive chain reaction, changing everything around them. And this doesn't just work for people, it can completely reshape a huge organization.
Get this. When a guy named Paul O'Neill took over as CEO of the manufacturing giant Alcoa, his very first speech to investors was, well, it was a total shocker. He didn't talk about profits. He didn't talk about synergy. Nope. He told them he was going to focus on one thing and one thing only.
And what was that one thing? Workers' safety. You can imagine the reaction. Wall Street was completely stunned. One investor literally ran out of the room to call his clients and said, "The board put a crazy hippie in charge and he's going to kill the company." But O'Neill, he knew exactly what he was doing. Safety was his keystone habit.
Think about it. To make Alcoa the safest company in America, everything had to change. Communication had to become way more direct, production processes had to be re-engineered for absolute excellence, and all of this created this powerful new culture of accountability. And the result? By targeting that single keystone habit, O'Neill accidentally created the most efficient and profitable version of Alcoa in its entire history. Incredible.
So, this incredible power brings us to a really deep and kind of complex question, one about free will and responsibility. I mean, if our brains are running on autopilot so much of the time, how much control do we actually have? And when are we really responsible for what we do?
Let's just look at two really tragic cases. On one side, you have Brian Thomas. He was a lifelong sleepwalker who strangled his wife during a night terror because he thought she was an intruder. A jury acquitted him. On the other side, you have Angie Bachman. She developed a severe gambling addiction and lost her entire family inheritance. The casino sued her for her debts, and the court held her responsible. Both were driven by incredibly powerful habits, but look at how differently society treated them.
So, where do you draw the line between a habit and a choice? Well, the most important insight, the biggest takeaway from all of this, is that your habits are not your destiny. The second you become aware of the loop, that cue, that routine, and that reward, you gain the power to step in. You get the power to choose, to rebuild, and to take back control.
And that leaves us with a question, really. A question for you. Now that you understand the code that's running behind the scenes, which routine will you choose to rewrite first?